I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr.J.J. Hurtak with my wife, Dr. Desiree Hurtak. We're here at one of the great convention centers in Central Europe. We had the opportunity 2 years ago at the high-level summit meeting at the United Nations to speak with many members of the intergovernment panel dealing with the climate change. And I'm holding a document from John Bromley from the Republic of Ireland, who stated emphatically that we had at that time only 10 years to solve the problem of global greenhouse emissions. Otherwise, we would see the demise of vast numbers of species, including the deterioration of our non-renewable resources on an exponential level. And so we feel the importance of this occasion of what we will call walking on water, or the celebration of water, H2O, to look at what we are facing as a planetary humanity and what strategies or countermeasures we can use through music, through positive celebration of future science to reach out to those across the world.
Right, there's many levels of climate change. There's many things that we could look at, but the water crisis is one of the key elements that we as a humanity can help change. But let's become more aware about that. The fact is that one child dies every 8 seconds from a waterborne sanitation-related disease, and that's about 15 million children a year. So this means that all we have to do is clean up the mess, clean up the waste, and we can help millions of young lives throughout the planet.
Indeed, a third of the world's population lives in water-stressed areas right now, and by 2025, this is expected to rise to 2/3 of the human race. So figure in the population of 6.5 billion people and recognize what tragic situations await us if we do not take action collectively on many levels.
Of course, there's a lot of elements that contribute to water-stressed areas, one of which is population, and the other is just simply climate change. We're having melting of the Alps and many of the areas like Kilimanjaro in Africa, so there's less and less water coming down to the people who really need it. So we can define a water-stressed area as an area where the water consumption is greater than 10% of the country's renewable freshwater resources. Many people have depended on melting snows and other aspects to keep their waters going. This is not always possible in a time of climate change.
And so we're looking at a situation where 1/3 of the human race lives in the shadow of death, according to my late colleague Rashmi Meyer at the United Nations. And we have been privileged to be part of the high-level summit conference, also the World Conference in 2002 in Johannesburg, on the need for sustainability and a new logic. We look at the fact that in spite of 75% of the Earth's surface being covered by water, only 2.5% of the fresh water is available. The rest is salt water.
Right, I know. You look at the planet and you think it's just covered with water. But in many cases, this is just not accessible to people. Of course, there are desalination plants coming in, but these are only in very advanced cultures and countries. And it's only, even for the United States, a very small portion of our country has been able to establish desalination plants just because of the cost.
It's important also to stress that of the freshwater resources, 3/4 of that is, as we're in glacial and permanent snow cover areas which are being rapidly destroyed. In fact, the mathematical models that I had presented in 1973 have been shown to be accurate, that we're seeing a rapid decrease in the snowpack in the glacial areas, both at the poles, at a rate of 5 times the models that were suggested by the Intergovernment Panel some years ago.
Of course, some scientists have tried to be very creative with this and said, well, maybe we should just capture a glacier, bring it down, and be able to tap the fresh water before it fills the oceans and actually raises our sea level.
Or some of our friends in Saudi Arabia said, we'll just take a iceberg and bring it south, we'll tow it and bring it to the Near Eastern ports that will be necessary. But all of this really begs the question that our planet is going through rapid changes. And we need to look at the ecological environmental strategy of seeing that we are all in this rowboat together.
But other than that, in terms of the glaciers and the salt water, really only a mere 0.3% of fresh water is surface water, something that's easily accessible. That's found in rivers and lakes. The rest is even buried very deep in the ground or subsurface. And we commend some companies who have actually gone to Africa now and use remote sensing radar to look for the underwater rivers, because oftentimes people are dying of thirst.
These are called radar rivers, and as you know, my past work has been with remote sensing technology, working as a consultant with many projects worldwide, both in satellite use of radar as well as ground penetrating radar to locate these underground aquifers in places that mean a situation of life or death for the teeming millions that live on the border of creeping deserts that are increasing.
Right, so someone could be dying of thirst and they don't realize that only sometimes like 5 meters below them, or maybe 20 meters below them, if a scientific team would come in, they could have access to great drinking water. So we're trying to find as well, many scientists working at the United Nations that we've been connected with are actually going and trying to map the area of Asia and Africa. Because in many regions of the world, both groundwater and subsurface water is being used faster than it can be replaced. West Asia faces the greatest threat right now, but the problem is not confined to only the developing world. In the United States, 400 million cubics, or 520 million cubic yards of groundwater is being removed from aquifers annually in Arizona.
So basically everything west of the Mississippi is a desert area. And we have to face the fact that if it's going to continue this way, then strategic movement of people, population bases will have to take place.
Right, so people living in Arizona or anywhere in that Mojave Desert tend to be using about twice as much water as is able to be naturally replenished in that area. In Spain, more than half of the nearly 100 aquifers are being overexploited, and many places around the world.
As we see here, as groundwater is exploited, groundwater tables in various parts such as China, India, West Asia, Western Europe, former Soviet Union countries, and regions are showing a drop by as much as 3 meters. And we have been working with those individuals who, through remote sensing, are able to reach deeper into the earth and have come up with a strategy of recycling the polluted waters. So we have to approach this not only in terms of a whole new technology of future science, but a whole new attitude amongst ourselves that we have the genius and we have solutions that we worked out on a localized basis in the United States and in various parts of Latin America that can be applied worldwide.
So here's a map put out by the United Nations, specifically UNEP, or the United Nations Environmental Program, showing in 2025 where water scarcity will exist and stressed areas. The blue areas are scarcity, and the red areas are getting towards scarcity or in areas of stress. You can see quite a lot. One of the sad things was that Libya had huge amounts of very, very ancient aquifers underneath the ground, and they tap that. It's okay to tap that for people and for livestock, for survival, but when you start tapping it also for areas like agriculture and perhaps not using the agricultural methods of watering so efficiently, you deplete. And these are areas that have taken, say, almost 1 million years to fill up. It doesn't happen overnight again.
So the leadership of Libya trying to create, as it were, mutton or herds of sheep engineering have really destroyed the vast water potential of that part of North Africa. As an illustration, we see this in an airborne thermal emission and reflection image on the Terra satellite. And with the possibility that we will see even greater problems in the Sahara area of creeping deserts, it behooves the governments of the world to look at new countermeasures or perhaps bringing water in from other sources.
And we understand some of these countries are really in stress, and their only resources are to use desalination, which is extremely costly, too costly for the people, as well as importing water from other countries. These are things that most people haven't had to do, but we're going to start having to do this with the population, with the agricultural needs that we have for people.